Mariana knelt on the cold marble floor, gasping for breath. Her vision blurred from the tears that filled her eyes. She pressed her hand against her belly, feeling a slight kick that reminded her why she had to keep going. The large hallway felt both grand and crushing all at once. She had just been told she must leave, and she did not know where else to go. The head of the household staff stood above her with stiff shoulders, looking down at her with stern eyes. Light from the tall windows streamed across the polished floor, revealing the sharp angles of the grand foyer. Mariana could almost hear her heartbeat echo in that space, loud and desperate. She had never felt so alone. Fear took hold of her, gnawing at every thought. She felt her child move inside her as she struggled to keep calm. This was not the future she had imagined, and she did not know how to fix the mess that her life had become. The news of her pregnancy had come as a shock. Even more shocking was the fear of what would happen if anyone found out who the father might be. She couldn't risk that, so she kept quiet, wearing baggier clothes and avoiding prying questions from everyone in the mansion. But rumors always found a way to spread in an estate this size, and soon the whispers grew louder. Mariana had spent sleepless nights worrying about how her condition would affect her job. She was determined to stay employed for the sake of the growing life inside her. Then came the order for her to pack her things. It was as if her entire world was crumbling around her, and no one cared to listen. Yet, in this moment of darkness, she clung to a small hope. This child was innocent. This child deserved a chance. She was not going to let anything happen to it, or to her. She might have been just a maid, but she had pride and strength. She would fight for her child and for the life they deserved. Her trembling hands pressed over her belly again, and her tears fell onto the polished tiles. She wondered if this was how her future would always be. Endless fear and the threat of loss around every corner. Mariana had grown up in a poor village on the outskirts of the city. Her parents had died when she was young, and she was forced to work in a small store to survive. She learned quickly how to take care of herself, how to smile politely at customers, and how to live on very little. When she heard there was an opening for a maid at one of the richest estates in the country, she jumped at the chance. Everyone said it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Good pay, free housing, and a respectable position. She had no idea how different her life would become once she entered the gates of the Davis estate. The estate belonged to Leonard Davis, a man known for his wealth, power, and charity work. People admired him for his business sense and the philanthropic projects he sponsored. He was a self-made billionaire who had started from nothing, which was one reason Mariana felt a certain connection to him. Both of them had known real hardship. But to him, she was just a new maid. She made sure to be professional and polite. In her mind, he was far beyond her reach. He was her employer, and that was that. But sometimes in the quiet moments, she allowed herself to admire the gentler side of him. She remembered how she had seen him comfort an injured dog in the garden once, whispering soft words as he lifted the trembling animal. She saw, behind his sharp suits and firm tone, a kind heart he tried to keep hidden. Working in the grand mansion was often stressful, but allowed Mariana to send money back to her aunt and cousins in her home village. She was grateful for the job. She tried to stay invisible, doing her chores without complaint, always following the rules. Yet one night changed everything. It had started with a gathering in the mansion. There were important guests, and the staff was on high alert, ensuring every request was met. Between the clinking glasses and the soft music, Mariana had made a small mistake. She had tripped while carrying a tray. The champagne flutes crashed, and the expensive rug was drenched in sparkling liquid. Terrified of losing her job, Mariana went down on her knees to clean the mess, tears burning in her eyes. But then, a gentle hand touched her shoulder. She looked up to see Leonard Davis himself, kneeling to help her pick up the scattered pieces of glass. She remembered the warmth in his eyes as he said, "It's all right. Accidents happen." He had told the other staff not to punish her, and he even joked with his guests about his own clumsiness to protect her from blame. That simple act of kindness sparked something in her heart. Weeks passed, and their paths crossed more often than she would have thought possible. Sometimes it was in the hallway, sometimes in the garden. They would share a nod, a brief exchange about weather or the day's events. Over time, those short greetings turned into slightly longer talks. Leonard seemed to appreciate her calm presence, and she found his kindness intoxicating. She knew it was not right, but there was no denying the spark growing between them. Late one night, when Leonard came home from a business trip, he found Mariana in the kitchen preparing tea for a headache she was nursing. He offered to make her a soothing drink he had learned about during his travels. One thing led to another, and emotions that had been building for months slipped past their sense of caution. Their connection felt too real, too strong to push away. But come morning, reality set in. He was a billionaire. She was his maid. Both carried shame and worry. Leonard, for his part, believed he had crossed a line that could complicate his entire life and business. Mariana felt guilt, fear, and a strange hint of hope. They parted with a promise to keep distance between them. She did not know whether to feel heartbroken or relieved. Still, the memory of that night lingered like a warmth around her heart. When Mariana found out she was pregnant, shock and confusion overwhelmed her. She had not been with anyone else, but the thought of telling Leonard terrified her. She imagined the scandal, the gossip, and the damage to his reputation. Maybe he would think she was trying to trap him. Maybe he would send her away. So she decided to keep a secret. She hid the truth from everyone, including him. As the weeks went by, her clothes grew tighter, and her face became thinner from stress. Yet she told no one. She was unsure of her next steps, only that she had to protect the life inside her. But secrets have a way of surfacing. Once her condition became obvious, it wasn't long before the head of the household staff demanded answers. They did not believe her pleas that she had nowhere to go. They said it was no longer acceptable for her to remain at the mansion in her state. In desperation, Mariana tried to gather her courage and speak to Leonard, but he was away on a sudden trip, lost in endless meetings. During that time, the head butler gave her an ultimatum: leave quietly or risk being thrown out with no recommendations. That was why Mariana found herself crying on the marble floor, clutching her belly. The day she was to be dismissed had arrived, and she did not know if Leonard even knew what was happening. She wanted to believe he wouldn't let this occur, but he was not here. She had no choice but to pack her bags. The estate staff showed little sympathy. They simply whispered among themselves and looked at her with mixed pity and judgment. Early the next morning, she walked out the gates, her belongings in a small suitcase. She stood by the road, tears streaking her cheeks. She felt a kick in her belly, a reminder that she was not alone. A friend from a housekeeping department had given her a slip of paper with an address for a cheap boarding house. It was far from luxurious, but it was a roof over her head. With the little savings she had, she hailed a taxi and started her uncertain journey. Part felt numb, still hoping Leonard would appear. He never did. The boarding house was small and cramped. The walls were thin, and the single light bulb in her room flickered. Every time it buzzed overhead, she felt a pang of worry. She had to find a way to make money. She was heavily pregnant, and it was not easy to get a job in her condition. Still, she tried. She spent her days knocking on doors, looking for cleaning or laundry work. Some people hired her for small tasks. Others turned her away. She made just enough to feed herself and prepare for the baby's arrival. The stress took a toll on her. She could feel it in her bones, and sometimes her stomach would cram from the strain. Each time, fear gripped her heart. She kept whispering to her unborn child, promising that better days would come. 4 months passed in this struggle, until one day, she found herself cleaning an apartment for a woman who was aware of her situation. The woman asked where she had worked before, curious about the unusual references. Mariana hesitated, but finally admitted she used to work at the Davis estate. The woman's eyes grew wide. She had heard about Leonard Davis's generosity and wealth. She had also heard rumors about the staff and how they were sometimes let go under uncertain circumstances. With a kind sigh, the woman gave Mariana not only her cleaning fee, but also a business card for a charitable foundation that helps single mothers. "They can help you," she said gently. "I know the founder. He won't turn you away." Mariana thanked the woman, tears gathering in her eyes. She had no idea the foundation would truly help, but she was running out of options. The next day, she visited the address on the card. feeling embarrassed at her worn shoes and loose maternity dress. When she arrived, she was greeted by warm smiles from volunteers. A tall woman in a green sweater introduced herself as the manager of the program. She asked Mariana about her circumstances, and before Mariana could even finish, the woman nodded with empathy. "We have resources for expectant mothers," the manager said. "Housing assistance, prenatal care, even job placement after the baby's born." Mariana could scarcely believe her ears. She filled out the paperwork, answered their questions, and was given a spot in a safe house for pregnant women in need. It was a comfortable, small apartment shared with another expectant mother named Lucy. The first night she spent there, Mariana cried tears of relief because she finally had a bed that did not creak and a lock on the door that did not rattle. Most of all, she had hoped that she and her child might be safe. At the Foundation's medical clinic, Mariana received regular prenatal checkups. The doctor, who was gentle and reassuring, told her the baby seemed healthy. They gave her vitamins and taught her about nutrition and newborn care. With each passing day, her belly grew larger, and so did her gratitude. She still missed the life she had in the Davis mansion sometimes. The sense of security, the beauty, even the camaraderie with some staff members. But she kept reminding herself that she was better off here, free from the gossip and fear. Yet, there was a hole in her heart whenever she thought of Leonard. She tried to push the memory of that one night aside, but it lingered like a bittersweet secret. She wondered what he was doing, whether he ever asked about her. Maybe he had moved on, not giving her a second thought. Other times, she fantasized about him showing up at her door, apologizing for not being there, and telling her everything would be all right. But after so many months, that dream felt impossible. One late afternoon, Mariana was helping Lucy prepare dinner in their shared kitchenette. Lucy was about 7 months pregnant, around the same stage as Mariana. They often bonded over the challenges of pregnancy, sharing stories, tears, and laughter. As they chatted, Lucy mentioned that the charity often received direct funding from wealthy donors. "In fact," Lucy said excitedly, "we have a major donor coming next week. I heard he's got connections to all sorts of big companies. I hope he likes what we're doing here, so he continues to help." Mariana smiled at Lucy's enthusiasm, but her mind wandered. This donor probably had no idea how much difference his money made for them. It was a lifeline. She helped slice some vegetables, then felt a wave of dizziness. She sank onto a chair, pressing a hand to her forehead. Lucy asked if she was okay, and Mariana forced a smile, blaming it on the heat and her big belly. She drank some water and tried to steady her nerves. That night, as Mariana lay awake in bed, she felt the baby move. She stroked her stomach, whispering, "I promise, little one, I'll do my best for us." She closed her eyes, letting the movement of the child bring her comfort. She did not expect any more miracles in her life. She only asked for the strength to face each day. The morning of the donor's visit arrived with a bustle of activity at the safe house. Staff rushed around, making sure everything was tidy. The mothers were asked to dress neatly and gather in the community room. Mariana wore a simple blue dress that her friend had given her. She brushed her hair and tried to look calm. As they waited, the manager hurried in with shining eyes. "He's here," she whispered. "Everyone, please welcome our guest." Mariana's breath caught in her throat as a familiar figure stepped through the door. It was Leonard Davis, looking just as confident as ever, though perhaps a bit more tired around the eyes. He offered a polite nod to the staff, scanning the room with mild curiosity. Mariana felt her heart hammer against her rib cage. She tried to shrink back, hoping he would not see her, or if he did, that he wouldn't make a scene. But then their eyes locked. For a moment, Leonard's expression froze. His gaze moved from her face, down to her pregnant belly, and back up again. Mariana felt panic rise in her chest. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, confusion mixing with shock. But to his credit, he said nothing rash. He nodded again and continued talking to the staff, praising their work and asking questions about the mothers. Mariana stood there, her hand shaking, wondering what she should do. She had hidden this for so long, and now fate had brought them face to face. During the presentation, Leonard spoke about his commitment to helping vulnerable communities. He talked about how his donations were meant to help people who found themselves alone and afraid. Mariana listened to his voice, feeling tears burn in her eyes. She knew this was the same man who had shown her kindness months ago, the same man who, one night, held her close in a moment of deep connection. And now here he was, unaware that the child in her womb was his. When the official portion of the visit ended, the manager invited Leonard to meet some of the women. A few approached him with shy greetings, thanking him for his generosity. Mariana tried to remain in the background, but her presence was like a magnet. Finally, Leonard approached her. She could see the confusion in his eyes as he spoke softly. "Mariana, I had no idea you were here." She looked down, her cheeks flaming. "Yes, I lost my job at your estate. I've been here for the last few months." He glanced at her belly, then back to her face, his voice carrying a note of genuine concern. How far along are you?" She hesitated. "I'm about 7 months now." Something in Leonard's eyes shifted. 7 months, he repeated, almost to himself. Then he cleared his throat, his voice now slightly trembling. "I'm sorry you lost your job. I wasn't informed about any of this. I had business trips, and I had no idea you were let go." Mariana nodded, struggling not to cry. She felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, longing, but she reminded herself that she had never told him about the pregnancy. It wasn't right to blame him entirely. "It's all right," she said softly. "Things happen. I'm safe here now." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the manager interrupted, guiding him to another part of the house. Mariana let out a shaky breath. She couldn't escape the feeling that this was just the beginning of a conversation that had to happen. She went back to her room, her heart pounding, hoping he wouldn't press her in front of everyone. Later that day, as the sun began to set, Mariana sat on a bench in the small courtyard behind the safe house. She needed fresh air, some quiet. She closed her eyes, trying to calm the rush of thoughts swirling in her head. That was when she heard footsteps on the gravel. She looked up to see Leonard. He stood with his hands in his pockets, his expression torn between worry and tenderness. "May I sit?" he asked, his voice gentle. She nodded, and he lowered himself onto the bench beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of a distant car horn broke the silence, and a cool breeze rustled the trees above them. Finally, Leonard sighed. "Mariana, I want to help you. Whatever happened before, that's in the past. But I hate the idea of you struggling on your own." She looked down at her lap, tears threatening. "You don't understand. I'm managing. This place has been good to me." "But why?" he pressed softly. "Why didn't you come to me? Or at least call me? I would have helped." Mariana swallowed, her throat tight. "I was afraid. I didn't know how you would react. After that night, you went back to your life. We both agreed it was a mistake." She paused, trying to keep her tears from falling. "I didn't think you wanted anything to do with me beyond that, and I wasn't sure if you would even believe me." Leonard's gaze was fixed on her. "What are you saying, Mariana?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Are you telling me that this baby is mine?" Tears spilled from her eyes. She did not trust her voice, so she only nodded. It felt like a huge weight lifted, and then slammed back down on her chest at the same time. His reaction was instant. Shock, guilt, and something that looked a bit like relief crossed his features. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His voice cracked with emotion. "I was terrified," Mariana admitted. "You have so much at stake. Your reputation, your company. And I'm just a maid who made a poor decision one night. I thought maybe it would be best if I kept it hidden." Leonard shook his head, his eyes glistening. "No, Mariana. This child is not a poor decision. This is our child. My child." He took a shaky breath. "I've done many things in my life that I regret, but I won't walk away from my responsibility. I want to help you. I want to be there for you and for our baby." She cried then, great sobs that she couldn't hold back. All the fear, the loneliness, The confusion came flooding out. Leonard placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and she leaned into him. For a moment, they just stayed like that. The sun dipped behind the roof of the safe house, and the sky turned shades of purple and orange. When she finally calmed down, Leonard spoke again, his voice full of determination. "I'm going to make this right. I don't want you staying in a shelter. I want you to have the best care possible. Please let me help you." Mariana sniffled, wiping her tears. "I'm scared, Leonard. This is all so sudden." He gave her a gentle smile. "I know, and I'm sorry. This situation is my fault too. I should have been more careful and more attentive. I never should have let you leave my estate without at least ensuring you were safe." His voice quivered with regret. "All I can do now is try to fix what I can." Over the next few days, Leonard met with the Foundation's director and arranged for Mariana to receive specialized care in a private clinic. He insisted on paying her outstanding bills. Though Mariana felt uneasy accepting so much help, she also felt a sense of relief that maybe, finally, things would be all right. The hardest part was explaining to Lucy why she was suddenly leaving. Lucy smiled and hugged her, wishing her the best, and teasing that she was lucky the father of her baby turned out to be a billionaire who genuinely cared. Mariana was moved to a comfortable apartment Leonard had rented for her in a safe, quiet neighborhood. It was modest, but still nicer than anything Mariana had ever lived in. There were 2 bedrooms, one for her and one for the baby. The living room was cozy, with soft couches and a simple table. She felt overwhelmed by gratitude and worry all at once. She did not want to be a burden, and she still was not sure what would happen between her and Leonard once the baby arrived. But she accepted the chance he gave her for the sake of her child. Leonard visited often. He brought groceries, asked how the doctor visits were going, and tried to ease her mind about the future. He spoke about setting up a trust fund, ensuring that the child would never lack anything. Mariana listened, thankful but uneasy. She could not help worrying about the difference in their worlds. Was he doing this out of pure duty, or did he truly care about her? Each day, he showed more signs of genuine concern, talking to her about baby names, discussing the color of the nursery walls. Over time, she began to see that he cared not just about the baby, but about her well-being too. As her due date approached, Mariana's anxiety grew. She was excited to meet her baby, but she worried about the pain, the hospital process, and the changes that would come. Leonard tried to assure her that she would have the best medical care. He set up an appointment with a top-notch obstetrician and promised to be there for the birth. Still, Mariana struggled to sleep at night, haunted by the memories of how alone she once was. She told herself she had to trust Leonard now, to trust that he wouldn't abandon her or the baby. Then, one evening, pain struck her unexpectedly. She was alone in the apartment, making herself a cup of tea, when a wave of contractions hit. She doubled over, gasping for breath. The baby was coming early. Panicked, she grabbed her phone and called Leonard, who was in the middle of a meeting. He rushed to her side, barely stopping to inform his staff. By the time he reached the apartment, Mariana was pale and in agony, clutching her belly, tears streaming down her face. Leonard helped her into his car and sped through the city streets toward the hospital, running red lights and ignoring honking cars. In the back seat, Mariana moaned as contractions rolled through her. She tried to remember all the breathing exercises she had learned, but fear overwhelmed her. Leonard kept whispering words of encouragement, although his own voice shook with worry. When they arrived at the hospital, doctors and nurses quickly wheeled Mariana into the delivery room. Leonard stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, wiping the sweat from her brow. The labor was intense and lasted through the night. Several times, Mariana felt she could not go on. Her body trembled, her vision blurred with pain and exhaustion. Yet Leonard never left her. He whispered, "You can do this," over and over, stroking her hair. He reminded her to breathe, to focus on their baby, to keep going for just a little longer. Finally, as the first rays of dawn lit the hospital windows, a baby's cry filled the room. Mariana collapsed back against the pillows, tears mixing with sweat. The nurse placed a tiny infant on her chest. She looked down at her child, a small boy with a shock of dark hair, and her heart expanded in a way she had never known before. She kissed the baby's forehead, sobbing with relief and joy. Leonard stood there, gazing in awe at his son. His eyes were red from tears he could no longer hide. He reached out, gently touching the baby's small fingers. In that moment, all the walls he'd built around himself seemed to crumble. He leaned over and pressed a soft kiss to Mariana's temple, whispering, "Thank you for giving me a son." She smiled weakly, exhaustion battling with joy. Over the next few days in the hospital, Mariana recovered from the strain of childbirth. Leonard was there every step, learning how to hold the baby, how to change diapers. The nurses giggled to see such a powerful billionaire fumbling with tiny snaps and baby blankets, but Leonard smiled through it all. His devotion to the child was clear, and Mariana felt a strong wave of affection for him. They had been through so much, from secrecy and separation to this moment of unity. When Mariana was discharged, Leonard arranged a special vehicle to bring them home. He carried his son in a new baby carrier, handling him with gentle caution. Mariana settled into the back seat, watching her baby sleep, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Though she did not know what the future held for her and Leonard as a couple, she knew he was committed to being a father. That knowledge alone gave her a sense of hope she had never dreamed possible. Once they returned to the apartment, the place had been transformed. A small crib stood in one corner, stocked with warm blankets. There were diapers, clothes, and everything else a newborn might need. Mariana felt tears well up again at the kindness. Leonard stood behind her, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. "I wanted to make sure you didn't have to worry about anything," he said softly. She turned to him with gratitude shining in her eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you, Leonard." He gave a small smile. "You don't have to thank me for taking care of my own child, and for caring about you." He hesitated, then added, "Mariana, I'm not doing this out of guilt alone. I care deeply for you. I should have shown it more clearly before." She felt a warm spread in her chest. "I care for you too," she whispered. "But our worlds are so different." Leonard took a breath, stepping closer. "I know, but maybe we can find a way to bridge them, step by step." He reached out for her hand. She looked at him, thinking of the mountains they would have to climb, but seeing the sincerity in his eyes, she nodded. For the sake of their son, and for the new feelings blossoming between them, she would try. In the weeks that followed, Leonard hired a part-time nanny to help Mariana while she healed. He continued to run his businesses, but he visited every day without fail. He would bring dinner, baby supplies, and occasionally small gifts that made Mariana smile. She realized that he was a man used to solving problems with money, but his presence spoke louder than any gift. Sometimes he would walk in, his shirt sleeves rolled up, dark circles under his eyes from a long day. Yet he always found time to hold his son, rocking him gently until he slept. At night, when the baby's cries woke them, Leonard would rush to the crib first. Mariana would watch him from bed, amazed at how carefully he cradled the infant against his chest. Those moments felt like glimpses of a tender side he rarely showed to the world. She was drawn to him more and more, finding comfort in his strong arms and the kindness behind his reserved nature. One evening, when the baby was about a month old, Leonard invited Mariana to dinner at a quiet restaurant. She was hesitant, worried about leaving the baby for too long. Leonard promised they would only be gone for a short while, and that the nanny was fully prepared. Reluctantly, she agreed. She wore a simple dress, still conscious of her post-pregnancy shape, while he appeared in a casual suit. He held the car door for her, acting every bit the gentleman she had always suspected he could be. They dined in a private corner of the restaurant, the soft glow of the candles illuminating their table. Mariana felt a bit awkward at first, but Leonard spoke calmly, asking how she was feeling, whether she was adjusting to motherhood. He told her about some of his philanthropic ideas, including new projects for single mothers in need. Then he reached across the table, taking her hand. "Mariana," he said softly, "I know this has been a whirlwind, and I'm partly to blame for the chaos. But I want to ask if you consider trying to build a family with me. Not because you have to, but because I truly believe we can make something beautiful together. We already share a son, I'd like us to share our lives. Her breath caught in her throat. Tears welled in her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment, feared it, doubted it, and now it was here. She squeezed his hand, her heart thudding. Leonard, I don't want to be a burden or a woman you help out of guilt, but I do have feelings for you. I want a family, too. I just need to know this is real. He leaned closer, his voice trembling with emotion. It's real, Mariana. I want you with me. Not just because you're the mother of my child, but because you've shown me what genuine kindness and love look like. I need that in my life, and I want to give you the same. Mariana smiled through her tears. She could see his sincerity. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I want that too. He let out a breath of relief and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Mariana's hand flew to her mouth. Inside was a simple ring, elegant and sparkling. I'm not asking you to marry me today, he said gently, but I'd like you to have this promise ring, a symbol of what I hope will become. When you're ready, when we're both ready, I'll ask you again. Mariana nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She allowed him to slip the ring onto her finger, feeling the cool metal against her skin. It felt like an anchor, grounding her to this moment of sheer joy. They returned home to the apartment, relieved to find their son sleeping peacefully. Mariana tucked him gently into her arms, leaning against Leonard as they admired the baby's tiny features. In that quiet, warm space, they found a sense of belonging that neither had dared to hope for before. Time passed, and with it came more changes. Leonard helped Mariana find a new balance in life. She took parenting classes and resumed part-time housekeeping for families who respected her. She still sent money to her relatives in the village, but now she did so with less strain. She continued living in the apartment for a while, so she could grow comfortable with her new role as a mother. Leonard visited daily, and on weekends he would take them both on little trips. Picnics at the park, strolls by the river, anything that allowed them to bond as a family. Eventually, after months of growing closer and facing any lingering fears, Mariana agreed to move in with Leonard. The estate, which had once loomed so large and intimidating in her life, now opened to her with welcoming arms. Some of the staff members who remembered her were surprised, but Leonard made sure everyone treated her with respect. He introduced her as someone he deeply cared about and as the mother of his child. Gossip, as always, stirred, but Mariana found the courage to ignore it, focusing on her child's laughter and Leonard's open devotion. The day Leonard and Mariana finally decided to marry was a simple affair. They chose to hold the ceremony in the estate's private garden, surrounded by a handful of close friends and supportive staff. Mariana wore a modest white dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers that Leonard himself had picked from a nearby field. Their baby, now walking with soft, unsteady steps, toddled around the grass in a tiny suit that made everyone laugh. Lucy from the safe house came as well, her own healthy daughter in her arms. Even the foundation's manager and volunteers attended, smiling proudly at how far Mariana had come. When they spoke their vows, Mariana's voice quivered. She remembered the day she had knelt on that marble floor, tears in her eyes, believing she was alone. She remembered the cheap boarding house where she had struggled. She remembered the day she reunited with Leonard at the safe house. All those painful moments led to this day. She turned to him, her heart so full she thought it might burst, and promised to stand by his side. Leonard, in return, vowed to protect her, to love her, and to cherish the family they had created together. They exchanged rings, and a rush of applause followed. Their baby let out a happy squeal, as if sensing the joyful mood. Leonard scooped him up, and Mariana placed a kiss on her son's forehead. Then Leonard pulled Mariana close. They shared their first kiss as husband and wife under the golden light of the setting sun. Laughter and music filled the air, and the small gathering turned into a celebration of hope and second chances. That evening, as the stars came out, Mariana walked to the garden with her new husband, their child in her arms. She felt a gentle breeze brush against her face, carrying the scent of flowers. Looking up at Leonard, she saw in his eyes the same warmth and kindness that had comforted her months ago when she had spilled those champagne glasses. But now it was deeper, filled with love and the promise of a shared future. She could hardly believe how much her life had changed, yet she knew this was real. They had faced their fears, secrets, and pains, and still chosen to stand together. Leonard bent down to kiss her forehead. Their baby babbled happily, reaching out to pat Leonard's cheek. Mariana smiled, tears gathering once more. This time, they were tears of pure joy. She held her family close, feeling safe, loved, and at peace. Life had been cruel before, but now it was giving them a chance to build something beautiful. As the moon rose over the garden, they continued to walk along the neat paths, guiding each other forward. They passed the large windows of the mansion, seeing their reflections in the glass. A billionaire would discover the most precious treasure of all, and a once-lost maid who found both love and security. In that reflection, she also saw a small child, innocent and full of promise. The future was open, and for the first time in her life, Mariana felt no need to run or hide. She was home, standing beside the man she loved, holding the child they had created together. And she knew, deep down, that their story was only just beginning, a story of hope, redemption, and above all, family.